In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Come, Holy Ghost, for the hearts of thy faithful, and the kingdom of the Father, the divine love. Send forth thy Spirit, and the heart shall be created. Let us pray, O God, and just instruct the hearts of thy faithful by the light of the Holy Ghost. Grant the gifts of the same Spirit. May we be always truly wise and ever rejoice in his consolation through Christ our Lord. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
St. Pius X,
Pray for us.
Our Lady, seat of wisdom.
Pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. All right, so welcome to the second talk on Catholic courtship. The topic tonight is who to court or who to date, building on last conference, which was what is courtship. So tonight, let's talk about what kind of person makes a good spouse and what kind of person does not. I mean, obviously, there's going to have to be virtue all throughout marriage, but you don't just marry blindly. You want to make a real selection there with the proper motives and the proper discernment. So what kind of person makes a good spouse? What kind does not? Who is ready to get married and who is not? And then we also need to talk seriously about the problem of mixed marriages. So marriages between Catholics and non-Catholics. So firstly, I think we really want to start at the basics. Well, you choose a spouse, if you're called to marriage, choose a spouse based on your goal, right? Not simply on your feelings or any degree of infatuation or whatever it might be. We have to, with something so important, those feelings are going to change over the years. That doesn't mean they're all going to disappear forever, but they're going to change. That's a fact. The infatuation, even no matter how intense it might seem or even be, it's not going to last in the same way. And so it's not safe to make this kind of a selection based on feelings. Now you have to choose a spouse based on your goal. What's the purpose of marriage? What's the purpose of your existence as a whole? And the purpose of the other person's existence too will be the same. So what's the ultimate goal? We know it's heaven. When it comes to choosing a Catholic spouse, then we start at the basics. All right, you want to choose a spouse based on your goal, not simply on any sort of infatuation or passing feeling. All right, so what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is heaven. And therefore, we have to have that as the first object. Marriage is a beautiful thing, but it's a means. It's not an end in itself. And a spouse is also, all right, let's say they're not your ultimate end. I don't want to call them a means in the sense of they're just something you can use or someone you can use for your own benefit. No, but they're not God. You're made for God. They're made for God. And marriage is an institution that helps the two of you, if it's properly chosen, helps the two of you reach God. So, if heaven is the goal of our whole existence, then heaven is the goal of the sacrament of marriage. The goal of the sacrament of marriage is union with Christ and permanent union with Christ in heaven. Catholic marriage then, and a Catholic household, because it's not just about the couple, it's about their children getting to God too, since children are the first purpose of marriage. Catholic marriage and a Catholic household are a means to this end of heaven. That means that a Catholic spouse is needed for a Catholic home to happen. How are you going to have a Catholic home if only one side is Catholic? Dad's Catholic, mom's not. Well, then it's half a Catholic home, but it's not the ideal of a Catholic home by any length. So we know this is going to narrow your playing field considerably. Not everybody in the world is Catholic. Certainly not everybody in the world is a good Catholic. So it's going to narrow your playing field considerably. You're not likely to find a spouse, a good Catholic spouse, in well, what we Americans would call bars or nightclubs or things like that. I don't know exactly. Here, clubs can mean different things sometimes, and everything's a club because then they can gamble at them. But yes, whatever the, you understand what I'm saying. You look in the wrong places, you're going to find the wrong type of person. They're not going to be someone who's going to help you to heaven. If somehow that did happen, it would be by far the exception and not the rule. Nor are you really very likely to find her at the local uni or even at your workplace. It could happen, it's possible, but it's not exactly likely these days. All the more reason then to stick around after Mass and to go to parish events and to belong to parish groups and to visit other parishes and to go to the young adult events and things like that in Goulburn. It's, if you want to find a good traditional Catholic spouse, it only makes sense you're going to go to good traditional Catholic things. And therefore, maximize the opportunities of meeting the right person. Now, it's true that some people make an almost impossible list of expectations for their prospective spouse. And it's true that sometimes on that list, they will have things that are over and above what can really be expected in reality. Or you might say, well, this, and this, each one of them is possible, but all of them together, not so likely. Maybe there are exaggerations on some of your lists, what you're looking for in a spouse. Right? But Catholic is not one of those exaggerations. That they are Catholic is not something impossible to ask. It is, I would say, it should be a deal breaker. If they're Catholic, you consider. If they're not, and they're not willing to become Catholic, I would say that's it. If you want to have a happy marriage. If you want to have a marriage that leads towards heaven for you, your spouse, and your children. All right, that's not too much to ask. So I would say if you really want to boil it down to the basics, he's got to be alive, he's got to be of the opposite sex, and he's got to be Catholic. And there might be a few other things as well that you want to add to that list, that's fine, but we do start with basics. And then of course you build. And of course he or she is not just to be a Catholic, but to be a good Catholic. Meaning that they believe in the whole creed. That they believe in the real presence. These are not givens anymore these days. That they believe that the Mass is a sacrifice. Catholic means, a good Catholic means that they have to really understand the traditions of the Church and embrace them. It doesn't mean, others may be trying to live a good Catholic life, but they're not going to make a good Catholic spouse if they're progressive and pushing the modern synodality. They're not going to make a good spouse. Certainly not for a traditional Catholic. They find another Catholic who wants the same thing. They might get along all right, but they're not going to be helping each other in that regard. In that regard, they're both going to be going down the wrong path. So a good Catholic means believing in the creed, going to Mass, so true practicing Catholic, going to the Mass on Sundays and holy days, frequenting the sacraments. If you are courting someone, and I'm not saying anyone is, but if you are courting someone whom you have never seen approach the confessional or the communion rail, that should be a big red flag. If they're Catholic and they come to Mass, but they never approach the confession and they never approach the communion rail, why would you marry them? They're obviously not settled in their own life yet. They're not ready to lead a family to heaven or to be the heart of a Catholic home. Frequenting the sacraments, praying, really pray, one who obeys the Ten Commandments, makes every effort there. Doesn't mean that they're absolutely perfect, but they're making a real, honest effort at keeping the commandments. And if they're breaking the 6th and 9th with you, then they're not keeping the commandments. It means that, well, something's wrong on both sides. And that's got to be fixed, or you're better off completely going the other way. Because they might be wonderful in many other ways, and so might you, but this is essential. If you cannot be faithful in courtship, faithful to God in courtship, if you cannot control your passions in courtship and the emotions and affections, then what's to say that either one of you are going to be faithful in marriage when attraction is felt for someone else? And the last thing you want is to have a marriage that's struggling with adulteries. And they do exist. It's heartbreaking. They do exist. So a good Catholic who thinks about others and who treats you, whether you're the man or the woman, who treats you as a child of God, treats you with respect, who holds you up on a pedestal. Each should be on a pedestal for the other, where they look and say, here is one that I admire, that I will protect, that I will uphold, that I will never tarnish. Here's one that I know will stand strong and true. That will help in marriage. If the two go into marriage still, without a fall, still holding the other up let's say, with great respect. Find a compatible, so for the women, for the ladies, you want to try to find a compatible Catholic man. Right? A compatible Catholic man, capable and willing to fulfill the essential duties of husband and father. Right? If you're looking for a Catholic spouse, if you're looking for a Catholic spouse, you're also looking for a spouse. So at that point, yes, you want someone who's going to be able to fulfill that role as spouse. All the essential duties, husband and father, providing, protecting, begetting life, open to having as many children as God sends, fatherly in his methods of child rearing, leading the family towards heaven. If he's not going to heaven himself, he can't be leading his family there. You can't lead anywhere where you're not going yourself. So again, the importance of regular sacramental life and all of that. A woman should be looking for one who models his life on that of the Sacred Heart. The Sacred Heart of our Lord Jesus Christ. Because he is meant to be the Sacred Heart in the home. I remember once one of my sisters, I've got 4 sisters, one of my sisters was talking with the young man that she was courting. And at one point, he asked her, what are you looking for in a young man? What are you looking for in a spouse? And she was caught off guard for a moment. It's a big question, especially when it's asked by the very man you're interested in. And she thought for a moment, and she said, I want a man that I don't have to drag to heaven. And I think that's a really good answer. The two should be helping each other. It shouldn't be a tug of war the whole time. Someone who has his priorities straight. A real gentleman, thoughtful, humble, chaste, chivalrous, respectful, strong, brave in the face of adversity, dedicated, and principled, steady, principled. Not just going with his emotions. What does a young man look for in a young woman? What should he look for? He should seek to find a compatible Catholic woman, capable and willing to fulfill the essential duties of wife and mother. That means homemaking, life-bearing, again, open to all the children God sends, not just to have those children, but to mother those children herself. Not just to put them in a daycare. Motherly in her child rearing. a helpmate, a companion willing to offer counsel, as well as to follow your lead. The sunshine in the heart of the home, one who models her life in every way that she can upon that of the Blessed Virgin Mary, whom she is meant to incarnate, so to speak, in the home. Seek then a real lady, one who is compassionate, humble, chaste, self-sacrificing, generous in the service of others, loving, docile, because that will be important. That doesn't mean she does whatever, follows whatever whim he has, but docile, meaning she's willing to follow. He can't lead if she's not willing to follow. At least it's going to be much more difficult. Respectful. Of course, he has to respect her and her office. She has to respect him and his office. And profound in faith. Because in the daily chores of a mother, there's either great faith or life feels pretty empty at times when no one seems to notice how many nappies she changes in a day. If there's not strong faith, a strong spirit of faith, those things become very difficult to bear. Another point, you want to take a good look at the other person's parents and at their family. Look, if you're courting someone, get to know their parents and get to know their family. Much will depend upon that. Right? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree and all that kind of bizzo. Right? It's just that we all know that, and it's true. Your wife will be a lot like her mother, at least as time goes on. Yes?
Just a question on the parents thing. Like, obviously, a lot of guys, I've met, including myself, who have come to tradition, have a pretty shoddy relationship with parents to varying degrees.
Right.
How does this look and correspond to what you're saying now?
Not good, mate. I'm joking. Now, so how does it look? Yeah, well, yeah. So I mean, basically, how does it look for those who maybe came over to tradition and their parents weren't the best role models, maybe weren't in a very good way themselves in their marriage? Does that mean that you have no hope? Well, no, it does mean it's going to be harder, and you're going to have to probably look inside and say, well, what are the things that I need to be aware of, lest I replicate what happened in my parents' marriage? Where am I lacking, and how can I fill those holes? Those things are real. Life does affect us, and our experiences affect us. But at the same time, of course, grace it not only lifts us up, but it also helps to heal. It does help to heal. So we take a good look at it, and then I think we're honest. If you're courting someone, you're honest with them about, well, I know that this or that at home wasn't ideal, and to me it's very important that I don't replicate that. If you see signs of that in me, I need to know because I want to work on that. It's reassuring to them, but when it's so by all means you take the individual as an individual. They're not just a clone of their parents. At the same time, don't be blind to the obvious similarities when they exist. And don't forget that those things really do impact. Right? A young woman who didn't really have a father figure, that's going to affect her. Similarly with a young man who didn't really have a father figure, it's going to affect him. It doesn't mean you can't get past that, but it's going to be hard. And similarly, different, but similarly with a mother. The father figure has a very key influence on stability and steadiness, but the mother has a lot of influence on just basic humanness and kindness and compassion and all of that. All right. So typically, we're generalizing, but your wife will be a lot like her mother, with some qualities of her father. And your husband, if you're the woman, your husband will be a lot like his father, with some qualities of his mother. All right, give or take a bit on both sides. So I guess what I'm trying to say, if you don't like either of your future in-laws, I'm not quite sure what you're thinking. Right? If you don't like either of them, and your future spouse is like both of them, maybe you want to give this another look. Now, it could be that there are certain exaggerated qualities in their parents that are, that are what are distasteful. Well, maybe that's not in your spouse. All right, or maybe you're being immature in your judgment of her parents. It could be. It could be that they just really know where they stand. They're really settled in life. And if they're just really strong about very important things, then we respect that. But if really there are entrenched problems, personality disorders and all the rest, really look closely at that. Problems don't typically get smaller as time goes on, at least not psychological problems. If you're marrying someone with bipolar, I feel for those people. It's a very hard cross to carry. But if you're marrying someone who's already got significant, a certain significant level of psychological illness, that's not going to be getting any better as time goes on. Not typically. Much the contrary. And of course, once you're married, sometimes these things arise after marriage. God will give you the grace. We can't foresee everything. It's for better, for worse. You know that. I know that. You do make the very best of it, and it can sanctify. But to jump into something that's, to jump into a boat to cross the ocean that already has major holes in it, is not a very prudent thing. Don't think that marriage is just going to work miracles. Pope Pius XI, when it comes to, on the same topic, I would say, of looking at the family, looking at the parents, and in that sense, knowing something more about your future spouse, because that's the nest in which they were raised. Well, Pope Pius XI says, it cannot be denied that the basis of a happy wedlock or the ruin of an unhappy one is prepared and set in the souls of boys and girls during the period of childhood and adolescence. So much of it's going to depend on the ease with which, the ease with which one weathers marriage. So much of it is going to stem from the home in which you yourself were raised. Again, there can be changes of heart, there can be development of qualities, and by all means, but don't forget that has an impact on you and on your spouse, your future spouse. So you're fortunate, very fortunate, if you have already received a lot from your parents and from your Catholic education and things like that. That will all help and dispose you for a successful marriage. But you have to use it all. You have to use the good example set and the doctrine taught and learned. All right, principles on paper don't make a happy marriage. It's principles lived out day to day. Those who before marriage were always self-seeking and indulging in impure desires and actions, whether alone or with another, right? But someone of that sort who is always self-seeking and indulging himself or herself before marriage will remain the same in married life. That doesn't just change when marriage offers rights and privileges that no one else has. It might calm down with time. There will be grace in the sacrament to stay faithful, but it doesn't just change the person. Someone who says, well, I know I have this big problem. I know I have this big problem with, secret sins, with pornography, I know I have these things, but once I'm married, that will all be gone because I'll have my spouse. That's not true. That's not true. And one has no right to bring such problems into marriage, particularly if those problems have become a vice, where they have a grip on the person, not just a random fall, which is bad enough, but a real grip on the person, where it's a habit. Even if no one else knows it. If the individual looks inside and says, I know I have a habit, a vice, of mortal sin when it comes to impurity, they need to debar themselves from seeking a spouse until they can get their life in order, until they can get their act together. So this means that, yes, in this world of ours, everyone has to step up, raise the standard, and work towards it. And someone who doesn't begin to work towards that standard until they're 25, 30 years old, it may be years. If they've had years of bad habit, it may be years before they've conquered that. But they owe it to their future spouse, and they owe it to their children to be able to control, to really have self-control. Marriage is too important. Marriage is not a right for everyone at every moment of their life. It's an important thing, and one has to be ready for it. Those who start early at self-discipline and self-sacrifice, one of the reasons why we push so strongly, get the video games out of the home, get these distractions out of the home, get these things away. Don't give your kids smartphones. We push these things early because those efforts at protection and then self-control are going to help them really be ready to live a full Catholic life, even when they're quite young. But if we fill them with all sorts of, if we spoil them with all sorts of gadgets where they really are spoiled because they have no self-control and they don't know how to control their passions, and they're, whether it's the social media or the distractions of all the, this feeding on the reaction of other people, that's a killer for a young woman. It eats away what is meant to be a mother's selfless heart, when she's always worried about how other people are going to react and how many hearts she's going to get or whatever it is on her social media chat. It's going to eat her heart away, kind of like impurity eats away the nobility of a man, the noble heart of a man. So it means really, no waste of time. No waste of time. How many men get out of school and they take sometimes years to just kind of try to get settled, working towards one career? Others get to work right away, and they might become a doctor, but by 25, 26, they're a doctor, and they're able to move forward. Great. Others don't go all the way to the doctorate, but they get started right away, and they're able to start a family sooner. Great. If they're ready, they're ready. Fine. It's not just a question of age. Father, how old do I have to be to start dating? When you're ready. If that's not till you're 45, then not till you're 45. When you're ready. And that doesn't just happen of its own. It takes real effort for an extended period of time. So you're going to be ready depending on when you started that real effort. How far out from there? Again, if you were raised in a really good family, you have a lot. We have a lot to thank our parents for at that point. If not, then, well, without discouragement, get to work. A good retreat is a good start, even if it's only a start. Now, what if there's an impediment? Now, we're talking about how to find the right spouse. Catholic, all these things, good, looking towards someone who would make a good husband, good wife. Fine. Now, what if there's an impediment? What if there's something that's, the church says that's an impediment to marriage? Well, that should be a clue to stop, drop, and run. All right? To get out. If there's an impediment, it doesn't mean, oh, how can I get around this impediment? Can I get a dispensation for this? Dispensations happen, but they're not the ideal. That's not what the impediment was there for. Oh, just so you have to tick a couple more boxes, and then we're all good to go. All right? It's not a question like that. All right, the farmers will tell you that each fence is there for a reason. If you open it, you close it behind you. Because each fence is there for a reason. And each impediment is there for a reason. If the church says you have no right to marry this person, that should be a clue. That is not a good idea to try to push on. Dispensations, even when they can be granted, and a dispensation cannot always be granted, but dispensations, even when they can be granted, do not take away all the dangers. Oh, I got a dispensation, so it's fine. You're still at risk. The church was probably trying to avoid a greater evil, but you're still at risk. And the church doesn't like it, might tolerate it, kind of like it tolerates other false, let's say it tolerates false religions in a Catholic state. There could be a tolerance of false religions, but it doesn't. The Catholic state wouldn't like it. The church doesn't like mixed marriages, a marriage between a Catholic and a non-Catholic, but she might, under certain circumstances, under certain duress, tolerate it. But it doesn't mean that the couple is out of danger. If the person you're interested in has been married before and has a spouse who's still alive, then no dating. You can't date a divorced person. If their spouse is still alive, oh, but Father, they got married outside the church. Probably wasn't valid anyway. Prove it. Prove it first. And then, meaning the church needs to prove it. The benefit of the doubt is always in favor of the validity of the marriage unless proven otherwise. So you can't just start dating someone who's a divorcee, thinking, oh, well, probably it wasn't a valid marriage. They've got to sort all that out first. Mixed marriages, all right, mixed marriage is traditionally an impediment, and even more, disparity of cult. So why do I say traditionally? Mixed marriage, what do we mean by it? By mixed marriage, we mean a marriage between a Catholic and a baptized non-Catholic. So a Catholic, let's say, and a Lutheran, or a Catholic and a Greek Orthodox, or a Catholic and a Coptic Orthodox, or a Catholic and a Baptist. They're all baptized, so-called Christians, but they're not Catholics. That's a mixed marriage. In the old Code of Canon Law, that was an impediment, all right? In the new Code of Canon Law, like so many other things, they've weakened it, where now it's a pastoral concern. It's not strictly an impediment. Well, I'm going to share with you my pastoral concern tonight. And we still treat it as an impediment, in the sense that we still follow the 1917 code when it comes to doing marriages in our chapels of this sort. If they wouldn't have done it in 1917 or 1940 or 1950 or all the way up to the new code, if they wouldn't have done it then, we wouldn't do it now in our chapels. We're not saying it's invalid in the Novus Ordo, but we don't think, and for good reason, that new law corresponds with the actual mind of the church. And we're going to look at the mind of the church. We're going to look at what the Pope said. 3 different popes. There were more, I'm sure, but I found 3 different popes. We're going to look at what the popes have said. We're going to look at what canon law said before. We're going to look at how the church treated it in the ritual, so to speak. And we're going to look at all of that. We're going to look at what moral theology said about it. These things don't change just because modern Rome has decided to try to compromise with the world. So, we need to spend some time really looking at this problem of mixed marriages. All right? Mixed marriage between a Catholic and a baptized non-Catholic. That's the strict meaning of the word. Disparity of cult. Means marriage between a Catholic and someone who's not even baptized. They've never been baptized anything. They might have prayed sometimes, or they might be an atheist. Depends, but they've never been baptized anything, or clearly invalidly baptized. Right? And clearly invalid baptism, like Mormons. Right? The Mormons have invalid baptisms. We don't even have to look into them. If they were baptized in a Mormon church, it's invalid. If they were baptized in a Lutheran church, we have to look into it. So, disparity of cult is that, and that's even more grave. What does the Catholic Church think about mixed marriages? Well, let's look at Pope Gregory XVI. In 1832, he wrote an encyclical to the bishops of Bavaria. And he concluded with the following statement. All right, what I'm trying to do is show you here that it's not just me. Pope Gregory the 16th, after he says why he doesn't want mixed marriages happening in Bavaria, he says, "Take courage, therefore, venerable brethren, arm yourselves with the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and work unceasingly to eradicate this deadly error which is so rapidly gaining ground. Let you and your priests take the necessary measures to induce the faithful more than ever to greater zeal to defend the faith and Catholic unity as the only means of salvation, and consequently to avoid every danger of separation. When the faithful are truly convinced and strongly conscious of the necessity to conserve this unity, then will they take more heed of the warnings and advice you will give them not to contract marriage with heretics. If nonetheless grave reasons sometimes determine them to wed, let them not proceed to do so before having received the Church's dispensation and religiously fulfilled the conditions that she usually exacts in such cases, as we have already said. So do everything you can to dissuade it. If you can't dissuade them, and if there is a grave enough cause, then make sure that all the other precautions are taken, because we're in for a hard road." That's Gregory the 16th. Pope Leo the 13th in 1893. So Gregory the 16th was 1832. Pope Leo the 13th in 1893 to the bishops of Hungary. I'm just going to quote a little bit of it. "Furthermore, to impede the violence of several evils, it is most necessary for the pastors of souls continually to remind the people of the duty they have of avoiding marriage with non-Catholics. Let the faithful be aware of and remember at all times the need of avoiding such relationships, which are so detested by the Church, especially those reasons which we have already pointed out in our letters." Quote, these are his previous letters, "that they give occasion to a forbidden communion of life and religion, endangering the faith of the Catholic partner, are a hindrance to the proper education of the children, and often lead to a confusion of truth and falsehood, and to the belief that all religions are of equal value, without distinction of truth and falsehood. If mom is Catholic and dad is not, or the other way around, it gives the impression to the children that all religions are okay."
What writing of Leo the 13th are you referring to?
Pope Leo the 13th, 1893, in his encyclical to the bishops of Hungary. So, page 187 here. Constanti Hungarorum. All right. Pope Pius XI in Costi Connubii, which we've been quoting already. He has paragraphs on mixed marriage. We're going to summarize a bit. Well, it is very good. Now, listen closely. Pope Pius XI in 1930, Costi Connubii. "Serious blame, not unattended sometimes with danger to their eternal salvation, attaches to those who rashly contract mixed marriages, against which the maternal love and foresight of the Church, for very weighty reasons, warns her children. Serious blame falls on those who disregard the advice of the Church and get married, have a mixed marriage anyway. Serious blame, not attended sometimes with danger to their eternal salvation, attaches to those who rashly contract mixed marriages, against which the maternal love and foresight of the Church, for very weighty reasons, warns her children. This may be seen in many documents, which are summarized in the following canon of the Code. That means Code of Canon Law. Quote, "The Church everywhere, and most strictly, forbids the contracting of marriage between two baptized persons, one of whom is a Catholic and the other a member of an heretical and schismatical sect. Everywhere strictly forbids it. If there is danger of perversion for the Catholic party and the offspring, Such a union is forbidden by the divine law itself. If the church sometimes, for reasons touching time, circumstances, or persons, does not refuse to dispense in these strict precepts, saving always the law of God, and with all the possible precautions against the danger of perversion, yet, even so, it will be difficult for the Catholic party to avoid suffering some detriment from such a union. Even if they get their partner to sign all the precautions saying, I will raise the children Catholic and I will do all, even there, it's not without danger. A frequent result of these marriages, the encyclical goes on, a frequent result of these marriages is that the children unhappily fall away from religion altogether, or at least rapidly lapse into a negligence and indifference regarding it, which is not far removed from infidelity and impiety. It should also be remarked that in mixed marriages, the living harmony of souls between husband and wife, which, as we have said, is to be modeled upon the mysterious union between Christ and his church, becomes much more difficult of attainment. Did you have a question, Andrew?
I was just curious what book you're actually reading from.
Oh, this is a collection of papal teachings on matrimony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it still in print somewhere?
Oh, you probably have to find it. I'm sure, I would expect it's out of print,
Yep.
but it was put out by St. Paul's Editions. You can probably find it used. They've got other topics. They gather papal documents all in one place on a given topic.
Yep.
So there are others on, medical things or whatever, medical morals or.
Thank you.
All right. What does moral theology say? What does moral theology say about mixed marriages? Here I'm quoting from McHugh and Collin, Dominicans, who wrote this book in 1929. Right? It's one volume of a 2-volume course of moral theology. Well, it refers to mixed marriages as dangerous marriages. This is a quote, the following kinds of marriage are dangerous to the faith of Catholics. A, marriage with non-Catholics, which includes disparity of cult and mixed marriages. B, marriage with fallen away Catholics, that is, those who have given up the Catholic religion, although they have not joined another. You don't marry a fallen away Catholic who's, I'm just not religious right now. Or, that's dangerous to the faith. Or, with those who belong to societies forbidden by the church. Now, that does not include the SSPX. Despite what the others might try to say. Freemasons and stuff like that. All right? Although they've lifted the excommunication on that one.
Is that the Bible one? Oh.
Yes. All right, forbidden by divine law, moral theology. Forbidden by the divine law on account of, so mixed marriages, forbidden by divine law on account of what? The danger to the faith in the aforesaid kinds of marriage are serious and proximate. The danger of the faith in such marriages are serious and proximate. And hence such unions are forbidden by divine law, as long as the danger is not removed or made remote through the use of precautions. And the dangers are to the Catholic party and the children. What we're saying there is your very marriage at that point becomes an occasion of sin. An occasion of sin against the faith. Unless you can manage to diminish the risks, it's even forbidden by divine law. You can't take a risk against your faith that's proximate. That's where all the promises of the non-Catholic party to raise the kids Catholic and let the Catholic party remain Catholic and practice and all that, that's where all those promises come in. They're trying to mitigate the dangers, the risks to the faith. But if they don't believe in God or they don't believe in religion serious, it's going to be hard for them to keep those promises later on. Where's the danger to the faith of the Catholic party? Again, this is moral theology. Quote, the Catholic party is in serious danger of losing the faith. That is, of joining the religion or sharing the ideas of the other party. Think, oh, Father, I know my faith. I'm a strong Catholic. Then why aren't you marrying a Catholic? If you're a strong Catholic, then why aren't you following the advice of the church and marrying a Catholic? No, if you're dating a non-Catholic, it shows that you're not a strong Catholic, at least not as strong as you should be. Are we worried about the faith of such people? Yes, we are. Moral theology makes it clear. The Catholic Party is in serious danger of losing the faith. That is, joining the religion or sharing the ideas of the other party, or of doubting the truth of the church, or of taking refuge in indifferentism. For if domestic life, look, even if it's, so there's two scenarios. Either domestic life after such a marriage is peaceful, or it's rocky. Either way, there's danger to the faith. For if domestic life is peaceful, the Catholic may easily be led in time to regard with favor the other party's religion or views. If it is not peaceful, oh, what a nice person they are. See how easy this is? We're having such a happy marriage. Maybe religion's not so important. If it's not peaceful, the Catholic, through fear or annoyance, may make compromises or sacrifices in matters of faith, or else suffer temptations that could have been avoided. I know I should be at Mass every Sunday, and I know I should put the kids in Catholic school, and I know I should have more children, but he or she makes it such a nightmare. And this doesn't even touch on the real dangers. If husband and wife don't agree about religion, it's very likely that they don't agree about contraception. Almost no one on the face of the earth agrees with traditional Catholics about never using contraception. Almost no one. And you allow a dispute of that sort to come right into your marriage. Good luck. If you can't even agree what's allowed between husband and wife in their own intimate relations, then good luck. Danger as well to the faith of the children. The children born are in serious danger of being deprived of the faith, the moral theology book says. That is, of not being brought up as Catholics, or of having their faith weakened by the example of parents who do not agree in the matter of religion. If the non-Catholic or fallen away Catholic interferes with the religion of the children, their baptism, religious education, attendance at church, etc. will be forbidden or impeded. If that party does not interfere, there will be at least the example during impressionable years of one parent who does not accept the Catholic faith or who disregards its requirements. This is written in 1929. Statistics indicate that one of the chief sources of leakage in the church today is mixed marriages. Where are the Catholics going? Where they seem to be kind of just falling away. What mixed marriages? And don't just think, well, we lost 3 children out of 5. 3 of them became non-Catholics. Oh, that's a tragedy. It is a tragedy. But 3 or 4 generations down the road, it's either hundreds of children who are on the wrong path, or, well, let's say, yes, yeah, it's possible. Hundreds of children. I would say right at this point, so I'm from a family of 9. I've got already 44 nephews and nieces. I would expect that probably by the time those families are finished having children, there'll be more than 50 nephews or nieces. Even if 40 of them get married and have 10 kids like my brothers are having, that's 459 great-grandchildren for my parents. Let's say souls, from the children to the grandchildren to the great-grandchildren, 459 by the time you get to great-grandkids. Now, granted, if you marry a non-Catholic and you don't have a big Catholic family, well, you might not have 459 people on their way to hell, because you probably won't have 459 people. You probably have about 300 of them that weren't even born. Is that any better? Maybe better than going to hell. But this is how serious it is. Not just one couple and they live happily ever after. Generations. It's forbidden by the law of the church. All right, let's look at Code of Canon Law. It's quoting the Moral Theology book's quoting canon law here. Dangerous marriages are also forbidden by the law of the church, the 1917 code. Lack of baptism in the non-Catholic party causes a diriment impediment of disparity of cult. That means if you don't get a dispensation, it's an invalid marriage. Not just a mortal sin, an invalid marriage. Marrying someone who's never been baptized without a dispensation. Membership of the non-Catholic party in a heretical or schismatical sect causes the prohibitive impediment of mixed religion. Prohibitive impediment means if you break that and you don't get the dispensation, you get married anyway without the dispensation, all right? It's a valid marriage, but a mortal sin. And of course, if they're going to get it without a dispensation, it means they've gone outside the church to get it, because any priest that has any sense wouldn't do it without a dispensation, right? Although these days it's a pastoral problem, so it's a permission. But in the old days, many times it would have become invalid too, because they would have been getting married outside the church. That's what it would have meant. These days, well, probably most of the, I don't want to be rashly judging, but I don't think it would be so hard to get in many modern Catholic parishes. Unworthiness of one of the parties on account of notorious apostasy or affiliation with forbidden sect societies prevents a priest from assisting at the marriage without permission from the ordinary. So if someone's a Freemason or something, the priest can't assist in that marriage unless he has special permission from the ordinary for some big reason. To go forward, the requirement of natural and ecclesiastical laws must be complied with. That means, all right, that dispensation has to be granted. And on the natural law side of things, I'm going to sum it up rather than read it all. The natural law, the divine law side of things, there has to be sufficient guarantees that the non-Catholic party is going to raise the children, all of them, Catholic. That they will make sure that they're all baptized, that they're all raised Catholic. Even if their Catholic spouse dies, they have to raise those children Catholic. If they're not willing to sign to that before the wedding, then we cannot do the wedding, the marriage. There's too big a danger, and it's against divine law. It would mean it would be invalid. So these modern priests that don't really get these promises and don't really take them seriously, it can actually invalidate the marriage. It's possible that because they didn't do their homework and really insist and be the bad guy, they could actually be provoking invalid marriages among these couples when, well, the non-Catholic has no intention of raising kids Catholic. What are the remedies against mixed marriages or dangerous marriages? Well, this is again from moral theology. Before the engagement, all right, so what do we do before the couple is engaged? What can we do there? Before engagement, Catholics should be instructed and encouraged to marry those of their own faith. Thus, confessors can discourage company keeping with non-Catholics. Parents can provide their children with opportunities for meeting suitable Catholics. And above all, pastors should frequently speak and preach to old and young on the evils of mixed marriage. That's why I'm doing this. Right? B, what do you do after engagement? After engagement to a non-Catholic has been made, the non-Catholic should be persuaded to accept the Catholic religion. So the couple comes and says, Father, we're engaged. You are? Yes. Are you both Catholic? No, he's whatever, this or that. Now what does the priest do? The non-Catholic should be persuaded to accept the Catholic religion if he or she can do this with sincerity. Otherwise, the Catholic should be warned of the danger of the marriage, and the pastor should refuse to seek a dispensation unless there is a really serious cause. The pastor should refuse. Oh, Father, please, can you just ask the bishop? Can you just ask your superior to grant a dispensation? We really love each other. That's not a serious reason. If it was, everybody should be allowed to get married. Under whatever, as long as they loved each other. That's not it's a hard thing. It's hard for the priest, and I've had to do this. It's hard to break the heart of the couple.
What would be a serious reason?
I knew someone was going to ask that. So let me tell you, I've been a priest now 18 years. I have done one mixed marriage. So don't ask me, unless you want to be told no. But I've done one mixed marriage, and why? Because the couple had been together for 50 years. They married in Las Vegas and stuck together. He was Catholic, she was not. She was not even baptized. It was invalid, right? 50 years they were together. They had kids, raised a family together. And then when he was probably about 70-something years old, he came to me one day. He started coming to the church, and he said, Father, what do I have to do to get back to Holy Communion? I said, well, what's your situation? He told me. I said, well, you got to get married in the church. Well, what's her situation? Well, she's not even Catholic. All right. Well, you'd have to go through marriage classes. We'd have to teach her a bit about the faith. Let's just make a start. Let's see where this goes. In the end, I did that marriage in the office, not in the church, but in the office, because you don't do it in the church building. We'll see that. All right. You don't do it in the church proper. It's marriage in the church in the sense that it's valid. It's not marriage in the church building that we're talking about. All right. So we did it in the office and changed the vows and all that. Why? Because they had been together for 50 years. They had raised kids together. He had already scandalized those kids by not practicing his faith all that time and marrying outside the church. They weren't going to have any more kids at 70 or 75. So there wasn't danger to new kids. So the best thing for those souls was to rectify that marriage. And now what would have been a scandal when they were young has become an occasion of help to those children. And, his wife became Catholic. But years later, she started wearing a miraculous medal during those classes, and she never took it off. And I knew that was it. He was one of ours soon. So yes, that's the one I've done. So there can be serious reasons. All right?
I'll let you off that.
All right, good, thank you. I don't want to give you ideas. Well, we'll create a serious reason. People do that. Well, how serious does it have to be? How big a mistake do we have to make before it's a serious reason? All right? Yeah, it's safer not to know. Better to look at what the mind of the church is. And the pastor should refuse to seek a dispensation unless there's a really serious cause. All right, a little more about from canon law. What if the dispensation for mixed marriage and disparity of cult is granted for a serious cause? Well, Code of Canon Law 1917, 1102, Canon 1102. In marriages between a Catholic and a non-Catholic party, all sacred rites are forbidden. So much for walking down the aisle in a white dress. You can wear a white dress, but it's going to be in an office, maybe a sacristy, with your witnesses and your parents. You won't be able to fit many more people in there than that. Because the church is not proud of it, and the church is not blessing it. The church doesn't want it to spread. The church is recognizing that it's valid. Witnessing it. Again, Canon 1102. In marriages between a Catholic and a non-Catholic party, all sacred rites are forbidden. In case it is foreseen that graver evils will result from this prohibition, the ordinary may permit some of the usual ecclesiastical ceremonies, excluding always the celebration of the Mass. So the bishop does have some power there, but don't ask me to ask him to grant it. Normally speaking, it's clear the church thinks it's a bad idea that it even happens. And if it does happen, then it's something you don't want everyone else doing. And these days, if we let that start happening, in our situation, we could have multiple marriages a year to non-Catholics and thousands of souls on their way to hell within a couple of generations. And I don't want to be part of that. The commentator on the Old Code of Canon Law, Buskarin and Ellis, all right, it was the 1961 edition I'm reading from, but the first edition was put out in 1946. All right, he explains further, what do we mean by no ceremonies, no sacred rites? He says, not merely the nuptial Mass, but any Mass, which from the circumstances might be taken as an adjunct to the ceremony, is forbidden. No Mass at a mixed marriage. Other sacred rites are equally forbidden, but the ordinary may permit some of the usual ceremonies except the Mass. The ordinary means the bishop. The place of the ceremony is outside the church, unless the ordinary, to prevent more serious evils, permits it to be held in the church. Probably, he says in another part of the commentary, probably such marriages are not forbidden in the sacristy. In other words, the idea is really, it's not a private home. We're not going to go do the marriage. Oh, good, this is my excuse for a garden wedding. That doesn't happen either. It means you come over to the church office and we kind of clear the books away and we make a little room and witness the vows. The fourth point, the usual practice is as follows. This is still the commentators on the Code of Canon Law, right, from 1961, the commentators wrote. The usual practice is as follows. The priest wears street clothes. I suppose that means like clerical garb, all right, or a cassock. So he's allowed to wear his black cassock. He's not wearing a surplice. He's not wearing a stole. He's not wearing anything that he would wear for special ceremonies.
Sorry, what was that? It says street clothes or cassock.
Or a cassock. So street clothes, I think what they mean by that is like the clerical suit. If back where you walk out in the street in, like here in Australia, you might go in the street with...
The Opus Dei cassock.
What's that?
The Opus Dei cassock.
The Opus Dei cassock. Well, maybe. I don't know them very well. You might know them better. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they wear. But that wasn't meant to be a jab. Sorry, it came out the wrong way. All right. So, but it's clear the surplice is not being worn. There's not a stole. There's not the ritual. Looking at the ritual, what does it hold? All right, for the ceremony, there's an exchange of vows, but we omit according to the rites of Holy Mother of the Church. So, do you take so and so as your lawful spouse? Normally, be according to the rites of Holy Mother of the Church. We just cut that out because we're not doing sacred ceremonies. We're just witnessing a vow. Then the having to hold bit, that's usual. Right? That can still be done. To having to hold from this day forward, for better for worse. Then the priest, rather than blessing the couple, ego coniugo vos in matrimonium in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, I join you in holy matrimony in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. Instead of that, it is by the authority committed to me, I pronounce you united in the bonds of matrimony.
They don't even get a blessing.
They don't even get a blessing. Is the church making this clear enough for everybody?
I didn't make it laugh.
No, they don't even get a. No.
I don't. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it's straight up. It's a hard road. The church is taking a hard stand and the church is a mother. The church does this because she loves souls, not because she's trying to persecute. Look at how far we've come. In a couple of generations, this was all normal until the council. And it should still be normal. And then there's an exchange of rings, but there's no blessing of the rings. The usual words are said, all right, about fidelity and all that. The usual words are exchanged, but there's no blessing of the rings. And that's about it. There's a little talk at the beginning, and there might be a little talk at the end. It's not a long ceremony. Often it would just be something the priest reads. All right, so enough about mixed marriages, and we are well into this conference of time. So let's fly through a few more things. All right, I know we're going to miss Compline tonight. Father McNamara will have to lead it with the sisters, praying for us, hopefully. But I would like to start thinking, because if there are questions, I'm happy to take some at the end, or you can stick around afterwards. But these are serious things. Mixed marriage took a big place because I think, at least I can't do that from the pulpit. I could say something about mixed marriage from the pulpit, but to go through what the popes have said, and what canon law says, and that all takes time. And I think it had to be done somewhere. And this is a good venue because you can go back to it and listen to it again. Because I don't want to be the one who has to tell you when you come for marriage classes one day, when you come and say, Father, we're engaged, we're so excited, we're going to get married. And I don't want to have to be the one that tells you, not on my watch. I don't think this should happen. I think you need to break up. And I've had to do that, and I've had to do it too many times. And you need to guard your heart before you ever get there. If you start feeling strong love for a non-Catholic, check your heart and put some distance. Tell them perhaps that you really care about them and you'd love to see them Catholic one day. Not because of you, but because they really think it's the truth. But don't bend on your principles. I know, even here, I know Catholics who have said to someone they were interested in, if you don't become Catholic, I just need you to know, if you don't become Catholic, I will not marry you. I care about you. I could see this going somewhere. But if you don't become Catholic for the right reasons, that's a deal breaker. Good for them. That takes strength. And to hold and to follow through on it takes even more strength. Good for them. And I know parents who will say, if you marry a non-Catholic, don't expect me to be at your wedding, to their own children. They'll say that. Good for them. Tell them when they're about 12, before they fall in love, when they still have common sense, to see that this is important. And then they'll check their hearts early on, and they'll thank you, because they'll find good Catholic men and good Catholic women. They are out there. And if you trust in God and you pray, God will send, if you're meant to be married, God will send you the right spouse. All right. Serious decisions demand serious judgment, mature judgment. There are categories of maturity. Sometimes we think, oh, maturity just means, that I can hold a job. Well, that's part of it, but that's not everything. 5 different types of maturity. All of them should be well advanced before marriage. Doesn't mean you have to be 80 years old, and all that, life's experience like that, but still, maturity. First one, physical maturity. That just takes care of itself usually, right? It's a question of minimum age, which is not very high. I didn't check it up again. I think for canon law, minimum age for a boy is 16 and for a girl is 14. It might be 14 and 12. I don't remember. It's very, very early. Right? That's minimum age for validity of marriage. We insist that parents sign off on it if you're under 21. That's our rule. Right? So physical maturity. Emotional maturity. To be able to bear up under the pressures of marriage. And there are real pressures there. Moral maturity. The ability to live a virtuous life, and if possible, to stay out of jail. Stay out of trouble. You're judging this in yourself, and you're judging this in the one you're looking to marry. Right? If you see signs of addiction to alcohol, to drugs, to pornography, to gaming, to gambling, then walk the other way, because they're not ready to start a family. If they're missing work, or they don't have a job, a serious job, because they spend so much time on their video games, they're not ready to get married. And similar with other things. But moral maturity, spiritual maturity, that they have a habit of prayer. They have a real spiritual life. They know how to make conversation with God. And they're able and ready to lead a family to heaven, either as the head or as the heart. Inspiring the family as the heart, or leading the family as the head. Financial, finally, the one that people usually think about. Financial maturity or financial security. Doesn't mean that you have to live in a palace, right? But you get those women who are like, oh, as long as we can get married, I'd live with you anywhere. Even in a tent in the park. Right. Not for long. Not for long. And even if she meant it at the beginning, once your children start to suffer, she's not going to be very happy with it anymore. So, no, it's financial security means that the man is able to, he has a career, not just a job at Macca's. All right? He has a career that he's able to provide food, clothing, and shelter. And for the woman, well, it means that she is able to live within her means, the means of the family. She may also bring something to marriage by way of finances and things. If she's been saving, oh, good. She can make good use of her time before she gets married, not a problem. But I would say, if it was a choice between money and motherliness, she'd be better off investing in becoming a good motherly figure and being able to take care of all the domestic duties well, than just saving money by working in an office somewhere. Much better to develop, of the two, maybe she can do both. Maybe she can make good money as a child carer. Great. Or a teacher. Great. But much better that she's making less money doing something that's very womanly, that's going to make her a better mother one day and spouse. Much better that in the long run. If she has time that she wants to spend in a valuable way. Of course, mature people ask and listen to wise counsel. So, just because they're mature Doesn't mean, all right, now we can do it all on our own. No, if they're really mature, they're going to ask wise counsel of their parents and priests and all of that. This helps to bolster what's already there by way of maturity. All right, a few samples of the type of people to avoid marrying. How many here are fairly familiar with Charles Dickens's books? Show of hands. Some, like Bleak House, Little Dorrit, Oliver Twist. These classics. All right, Dickens. If you want to learn about how to have a happy marriage, if you want to learn about love and life, read Charles Dickens. There's plenty there. Now, it takes a lifetime to get through any one of his books. They're about 1,700 pages long each. Well, no, maybe about 900 pages each. But they are full of wisdom, all right? And luckily, BBC has put out video versions of a lot of them that are quite well done in general, all right? So, types of people to avoid marrying. Before we get to Dickens, I would say P.G. Wodehouse. You ever heard any of P.G. Wodehouse? Jeeves and Wooster. All right, don't marry a Bingo Little. Bingo Little falls in love with every woman he sees. And then when it falls apart, he falls in love with the next woman. All right, well, that's not going to bode very well for marriage. So, yeah, don't marry a Bingo Little. If they're all about looks, if they're that kind of person, all about looks, it's, oh, she's my angel. And you're more like a Mr. Guppy. All right, that kind of person, like a Mr. Guppy in Bleak House. All right, he loves Esther Summerson until she gets scarlet fever, and her face is marked by the fever, and then she goes from being his angel to just being, well, I hope you won't hold me to anything I've said about engagement. Yep, no, it's worth a watch. Bleak House. It's even a mystery in the midst of it. All right. Don't marry someone who's spoiled. All right. This could go either way, I suppose. I think it'd be worse if it's a man who's spoiled, and he's just, mom's waited on him hand and foot, and he's like the little prince or something, little Lord Fauntleroy or something. I don't know. I don't think you'd want. Yeah. Don't marry a spoiled man, but don't marry a spoiled woman either. Unbearable. They're unbearable people. Right? Think of Dora Spenlow in Dickens' David Copperfield. Dora. Right? All that glitters. I think Dora, it must be a play on the word for gold, right? All that glitters is not gold. She glittered, but David married her, and he found out that, well, she was just as foolish and giddy as she seemed during courtship. And she was more interested in playing with her dog, Jip, than in keeping house for David. And because David he couldn't dare to displease Dora because Dora would throw a fit because she was spoiled, he just permitted her to remain in her pouty habits. And he was miserable all her days. Luckily, she died. And then he married the girl that he should have married to begin with, right? Agnes. Don't marry a narcissist. Right? There's a lot of talk about narcissism these days. You can look it up online. And it's a real thing. All right? They become the center of everything. Their world revolves around them. Somebody dies and they think, well, how inconsiderate their timing. It's just everything's about them. They are the hero and the victim every time. They tend to control. They've got this controlling behavior. It's a tendency, well, and you probably met some people like this. Whether it's a man or a woman, if you're dating someone and they are controlling, walk the other way. It will not work in marriage. You might go, oh, let them control me. I love them. When you see them breaking your children, you will not let them control the house anymore, and it will be a war. It's going to be too late to change it, probably, because they've controlled it and they've got a grip. It's just going to be a war, probably end in a divorce. Unfortunately. I'm not saying it's right, but that's the way it tends to go. You can become a saint through it too, but there's a lot of sacrifice. And it's very hard not to become bitter. Where you are, the controlling person, it's always, a text message or a phone call. Where are you now? What are you doing? Don't do that. Don't spend that. Don't listen to anyone else. All right? Don't ask anyone else's opinion. Did you ask my permission? Let me check your phone again and again and again. And remember, you cannot have fun or happiness without me, so don't even try. I will hound you no matter where you are. And no matter what fun you're trying to have, I will, if I'm not there, you will be miserable too. That's a narcissist, at least one type of narcissist. They said there are grandiose narcissists and vulnerable narcissists. The grandiose is one who was so pampered as a child and told he was something so special that he believes it. And then he looks down on everyone else. And that's like a James Steerforth and David Copperfield. Or perhaps a Thomas Gradgrind Jr. in Hard Times, Dickens's Hard Times. Dickens calls him the whelp. He was really not a good character. We could have a whole class just on Dickens sometime. Vulnerable, the vulnerable narcissist. All right, that's perhaps, so that's someone who's been so belittled as a child and now he's trying to react. He's got this inferiority complex, and so he's always trying to make him puff himself up and control others because he doesn't want to be trodden on. All right, that might be someone like a Uriah Heep in David Copperfield. Or I would say even the old Mr. William Dorrit in Little Dorrit. He's a vulnerable narcissist. Another type of person you want to avoid marrying, all right, the mooch. The mooch. They get everything they can out of others and they don't really contribute anything. They never pay for a bill. They never pay for a check. They always find a way for someone else to do it. They never do the work. They always find someone else to do it. All right, here I would say we could call him a Harold Skimpole of Dickens's Bleak House. If you know these books, you'll appreciate it. If not, you should really go find out these people. All right, he says, he confesses, I have two of the oldest infirmities in the world. One, that he had no idea of time, and the other, that he had no idea of money. And that's a perfect excuse for doing whatever he wants and hurting everyone around him. All right, so, but very childishly, he acts like he's very innocent about it all. Harold Skimpole. All right, and then another type that you don't want to marry is a flake, what I would call a flake. All right, someone who just kind of floats around, blows around with the wind. Think of a Richard Carstone in Bleak House. He's affable, but he's lazy. He doesn't stick to anything. He has no real drive or direction when it comes to work, real work. He's always changing careers. First he'll be a doctor. Oh, that gets hard. Then I'll be a soldier. Oh, that gets hard. Maybe I'll be a lawyer because I've got a case at law. And then he basically ruins his life, ruins his health, marries the poor girl that she would have probably been a pretty good girl if I liked her a lot in the book. I think she'd been a really good girl if she would have just found the right man. But instead she marries this man who is really a loser and who has wrecked his own health. And, well, they do marry, and she carries his child as he lays there and dies. And she gets to raise the child on her own. Because he couldn't stick with anything, and he had no real strength. Or an Edward Dorrit, Little Dorrit's brother, who's just a loafer and a gamer. And then I think there's one more type of personality you really don't want to marry, and I don't even think Dickens, with all his imagination, was able to come up with one of these. We could call them an identity-confused person or an alphabet person. Don't marry one of those. You know, LMNOP plus. All right? They're not fit for Catholic marriage. It's clear they're not fit for any marriage. Just a fact. If marriage is what we say it is, they're not fit. So choose a spouse, perhaps such as Esther Summerson, John Dice, that's from Bleak House, Amy Dorrit, Arthur Clenham, or even John Chivery from Little Dorrit, although he was a little obsessed with his own tombstone. Agnes Wickfield from David Copperfield. All right, there are good characters out there. You can find them if you find the right book and you know where to read. And they are out there in real life too. Maybe not in in Dickens's style exactly, but they are out there. And I would hope that the best of them are in our circles. But we do have to work at it. And I would say, if I had to make a generalization, somehow it seems to me that I've been now in multiple parishes and different countries. In our circles, I would say at least 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1, that we have 3 to 1 that we've got really good girls to really good men. We need the men to step up. I'm not saying here as such, I'm not trying to attack anyone personally, but I would say as a general rule, although everyone should step up, still I would say it's easier to find a really good traditional Catholic girl, really good. There are some really good ones out there, right? You see it on the retreats and things like that. Really impressive. It's easier to find them than it is the really impressive men, even if they're out there too. One last point. Pity. Pity may be a wonderful quality, but it's not a proper motive for marriage, girls. You don't marry someone out of pity. You might pick them up from the street, when they've fallen on the street. You might care for them when they're ill out of pity. But pity is not a proper motive for marriage. This idea that, well, he needs me. Right? That's like Nancy in Oliver Twist. She ends up being killed by the man that needs her. Right? No one else will marry the poor man. That should be a clue. That should be a sign. That's not a motive for marriage. Right? And thinking, oh, I can change him. That's just an illusion. All right, questions? Yes.
We're on mental illness. It's a very difficult area because it's hard to determine if someone has a mental illness. So it could be, undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, could be diagnosed, but knowledge of that diagnosis is withheld from the other party.
Yes.
And even for those trained in psychiatry, it can be difficult to diagnose.
Yes.
You mentioned, like narcissism. There are plenty of other cluster B personality disorders and the like. So how does one navigate that space?
Yes.
Short of getting a psychological test.
Yes. So how do we avoid all the, narcissism is one type of mental disorder. I'm saying repeating it more for the sake of the camera, the audience there. But how do we navigate? How do we know it? There are so many undiagnosed disorders. Well, I would say firstly, if there are some signs, and especially if there's a pattern of mental trouble in the family, it's not unreasonable to insist on some sort of a psychological evaluation, even for their own sake. It's very hard. It's not something that you just go pushing on everybody. But I mean, I know a priest who it's not a rare thing for him to say, all right, well, you're looking to get married. That's great. I'd like you to go in and talk to this psychologist I know, or psychologist I know, and see. Let's look at compatibility and your mental states. I'm not saying that has to be done in every single case, but if there's doubt, don't just jump into it. Look at the surrounding history. Normally it plays out further on, and normally it is hereditary. But you talk to their friends, you talk to their siblings. Have they had some sort of a major change? Are they different than they were when they were younger? There's always going to be a certain risk. Marriage is for better or for worse. You don't know what's all going to come down the road, but yeah, I think you can find a lot of it. You can see signs of a lot of it if your eyes are open. At the same time, you don't want to be reading into everything either. So yeah, I think we got to find that balance. I think if you start noticing something odd, that's where your friends and family help a lot. I like him a lot, but this, or I like her a lot, but this. What do you think? I heard that sometimes that can be a sign of, do a little research, see. If it's not warranted or it's really, really mild and they've got it perfectly under control, that's different. But yeah, it's a good question.
Because with some of these disorders, at least on the surface, it might seem like the person has very good qualities. Like
Yeah.
You know, for instance, narcissism, like that's a pretty obvious one where, okay, this person has a very high perception of themselves, but then something like borderline or histrionic personality disorder, they actually display positive traits, a lot of positive
Yes.
pronounced and enhanced positive traits in the beginning.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know what to tell you there. Not being a doctor, there may be certain, things the doctors could say or warn about, but I think you want to, as a general rule, you want to take the person as they are, but you do have to keep your eyes open because this is a permanent, like I said last time, if when you bought a car, you knew that you were going to have to stick with this car the rest of your life, you'd be really careful about the car you bought. And this is much more than a car. This is a partner for life. So yes, I mean, you want to do your research, make sure that you take your time to get to know them well enough. Yes. I think what is maybe more, what some people might ask is, well, what if they have addictions and I don't, how am I supposed to know about those addictions if I can't hear their confessions? I mean, if you're dating someone, you can't hear their confessions. How do you know if they have addictions? Usually it's actually, I think, not so difficult to tell. If you're a virtuous person and you're demanding a virtuous courtship. If they have addictions, they probably have a real problem of self-control. If they can't control themselves in the way that they show you affection, it might be because they have an addiction. It might be because they're just selfish in other ways. Either way, there's a problem that they need to fix before they're ready for marriage. It might be real addiction. But if they're able to always remain proper, if they're able to keep that standard high and keep their self-control, there's a very good sign that they've got self-control there. It's probably flowing into their, when it comes to alcohol and other things, probably. Whereas if everything was allowed in courtship and there's, all sorts of sexual activity that's forbidden, but it's, the couple, let's say you let down your guard and let these things happen. You no longer have a clear temperature gauge for whether this person has self-control. In fact, everything's pointing to the fact that they don't. Even if you said this is okay. They should know it, they do know it's not okay. Other questions? Yep.
If someone goes home to my house and listens to your song, considering everything you said already, and they think to themselves, okay, I want to have a family, I know that's what I want, but they're not too sure on well, they know what to work on, but would they just approach you and say, hey, let's have a meeting about what I can improve on, and then you tell them?
Yeah, good question. Good question. So let's say someone goes home and says, I really want to get serious about getting ready to have a family. Where do I start? Can they just approach a priest and ask for a game plan? Or yes, I mean, I think, whether it's myself or one of the other priests in the parish or whatever parish you're from, I think it's a very good thing. It doesn't mean you need monthly spiritual direction necessarily. Not every priest is able to give that. But to set out a game plan and say, all right, well, look, if you can be honest with me, I can be honest with you, where you need to start, what kind of program you need to put into place so that within the next, years or 2 or 3, you're really in a good place where you could marry. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, it can happen on retreat, but it can happen in the office too. Yeah. I'm out of town next week, by the way. I'm joking. I'd be happy to help, but I am out of town next week. I know. All right. Any other questions? Anybody hungry? All right. We'll call it a night. You want to kneel down? I'll give you a blessing. Benedictio Potentes, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sanctus, et provost Amen. Thanks for your patience.